Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We would also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about autism stories. On today's episode, Paula Liub joins us to discuss how she helps neurodivergent women to treat or prevent burnout and feel good again. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Paula, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Hello, Doc. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I'd like to start off by learning about your story. Where would you say your story in the autistic community begins?
So I'm a late diagnosed. I think I was diagnosed around 33. And the story for me was as follows. I think I was like burning out pretty much all the time in my life. I probably was burning out in high school and university. I was burning out in my early career, and I didn't know I was autistic. And everyone around me was like, well, yeah, we all get tired, we rest, and then we're fine again. And I thought this is how life was. I thought this is just like how everyone was living. And at one point, I think I was maybe around 27, 28. After another burnout, I said, you know what? This is enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't care if everyone is doing it. I don't care if this is normal. This is not for me. I am going to find a way to not be like this anymore. And I had no idea how or what or how long it would take, but I just had this inner resolution of, you know what? I want to really like do something differently. And I started this like inner quest or journey of getting to know myself better, working on myself, even though at that point, like I was already in mindfulness for many years. I was meditating. I kind of knew quite a few things how to help myself, but it wasn't helping enough. So I knew there was so much more I could do. So I started doing so many more things. I really was researching a lot. I also have a background in psychology, so that helped. But what happened was like I would discover like another layer, some reason for my burnout. I would remove it and I would think I'm good now, but then I would burn out again because there is another layer and another layer and another thing and another reason. So it took me quite a long time to go through all the different layers of my well-being to really find the healing. And one of those layers was discovering I was autistic, and not just I mean, of course, this was a big discovery. It made a big change, but not only the discovering that I was autistic, but really getting to know my neurotype in much more detail of what exactly triggers me, why, and how it works with my energy levels and all those details of of my neurotype and what it means to me. So this really was my story about how I came across the potential of being autistic, got diagnosed, and this really was part of my bigger self development and growth journey.
Now, you briefly mentioned mindfulness practices, and I read
Mm.
that you have about 18 years of incorporating mindfulness practices into your life. That's allowed you to develop a system that uses a combination of science and proven mindfulness tools. So I'm interested in kind of learning, what have you found that science says about why we as autistics, or maybe not even specifically as autistics, but why burnout does occur?
It's a complex phenomenon. It's not just feeling tired, it involves many other things, such as emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, resentment, cynicism, feeling lack of accomplishment, not necessarily lacking accomplishment, but feeling that you're lacking accomplishment. So it's quite a complex phenomenon, and there's many causes. We can actually put the causes in two different categories. So one is what I would call external causes. It could be workload, stress. For autistic people, it could be having to mask, having sensory and friendly environments, loud environments. It could also be things that are out of control, like having chronic health conditions. So these are all the like external factors, the circumstances that are around us that make our life more difficult. So yes, that is the first category, the external factors. And then there are internal factors. So there are things like having low self-worth or low confidence, low self-esteem, which in turn makes us to not draw boundaries or not to maintain boundaries. It could be also something like not understanding really how to manage your energy levels, where your energy comes from, where it goes. It could also be things like skills to regulate your nervous system. So yeah, there are basically these two types of factors. There are external ones and internal ones, or things that you cannot really control much, or and things that you can control and learn. Yeah, so these these would be the different types of reasons.
And if someone's in burnout, what might be some of the first steps they can take in the process to hopefully move towards not being in burnout or being less overwhelmed?
Sure. Firstly, I would say talk to somebody. As a very first step, talk to somebody. I know it's hard. It's like a stigmatized topic, but find someone you can really trust and who can sympathize with you, right? Not say something like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or something like that, you know, because I think what doesn't kill you causes you burnout. But really find someone you can talk to. Could be a friend, could be a counselor, could be a coach. Many of those professionals offer a free call. Like I myself also offer a free call, so you can absolutely book a call with me. I'll be happy to talk to you, to see where you are, give you some advice for next steps you can take. Talking to someone is really helpful, because sometimes all we need is just to be heard and be understood, and our emotions and feelings to be acknowledged, to be validated. That is really, really helpful. Then that person might also help you to see some of your blind spots and plan some steps that you can take next, because we might not necessarily always see what we can do next, especially if we are in a vulnerable situation. It can be hard to see, hard to make decisions. And the second step would be find ways to rest. So I know not everyone can take a break or take a vacation or have a lot of time to rest in their schedule. But even if you cannot have a longer break, you can still find little pockets of rest in your day where you can really make sure that you have a good quality rest, even if it's a small amount, but it can be a good quality rest. And it would help. And what would also help with rest is learning to regulate your nervous system, to improve your sensory diet, to unmask more. So these are the sort of things that I would look at first. And I also have a free PDF guide, which is called Neurodivergent Mindfulness. Hopefully you'll be able to link it in the show notes. So you can download that free guide, and it has a bit more advice and information about like the basics of neurodivergent wellness and what you can do to get started if you feel unwell.
It's funny you mentioned the quote, "What kills you doesn't, will make you stronger." And I've always strongly disliked that quote because I guess what I've realized is that, I'm 45 now. What I've realized is what doesn't kill you will slowly kill you. I think maybe that's more an appropriate quote. Uh, but I'm wondering because, there's been times in my life where I've been very inspired, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that I think I've always been in burnout to one degree or another. So I was wondering, what do you think prevents people from full recovery and keeps them potentially someone like me in the cycle of burnout, whether it's a low amount of burnout, a moderate, or a more intense amount?
I see this a lot in neurodivergent community. This was the case for me as well. And although I am now really well, I can say that it still happens sometimes that I get quite close, but I know what to do, how to prevent it. how to take care of myself. So one of the biggest mistakes probably that I see most of the people make is, remember how I talked about the external and internal factors of burnout? So I see a lot of people make this mistake that they hang on to the external factors. And there's two ways that they do it. So one way is thinking that, okay, if I have all these things that I cannot change, this is just how life is going to be. And this is how actually I was in the beginning as well. I thought, okay, this is how life is. It's hard. We work hard. Life is hard. This is busy. This is noisy. And I really understand that logic, because I also myself, now I can say I used to have chronic health conditions. Now they are much better, because when I reduce the stress and I manage my nervous system, I regulate my nervous system, the chronic conditions, they are much better. But I understand that thinking, okay, if I have a chronic health condition that is uncurable, then I'm just going to be like this. Like it is logical to think like that, certain factors, when they're there, they're just going to be there. But actually, the truth is you can create more ease, more wellness, and just be better, even in the circumstances where you are. You can learn skills to regulate your nervous system. You can learn to draw boundaries. You can learn a bit more about managing your energy, understanding where it comes and where it goes. You can get into more details about your neurotype, so you can understand how to take better care of yourself. So it is absolutely possible, even if you have circumstances that you cannot change, it's absolutely possible to feel better in those circumstances. And the second mistake when people hang on to the external factors is actually working so hard to change them. I did this mistake as well. Actually, I moved countries a few times. I changed careers a few times. Again, I understand the logic. If you see, okay, this life that I have is like causing me unwell, so I'm going to change it and I'll be well. But actually what happened, I just changed the decorations and I repeated the same scenario. And this I actually see so often in my clients now. I sometimes speak to people about their burnout and they're like, yeah, I know it could be good for me to learn some of those skills, but you know what? I'm going to change my career. I have this new opportunity, so I'm going to go do that. And I wish them luck. And then 6 months later, they say, you know what? This career I thought is so much better for me, and it is, but I'm still burnt out because I still don't know how to draw boundaries. I still don't know how to manage my energy. I still don't know how to manage all these emotions, how to, all these skills that they need to learn. So I I understand this reasoning very well, because when I changed careers, when I moved countries, yes, there was some relief in it. Yes, there was some improvement in it, but actually it was minor compared to the improvement I got when I started working on myself. And I understand another thing is that actually, when you have to work with yourself, there's a lot of resistance going. You have to change your mindset. You have to change the way you relate to yourself. It's very hard. There's a lot of resistance to that. It's much easier to go and change external things. Although in the long term, it actually is harder, because changing careers, moving countries, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. You put so much into it, and then you repeat the same scenario in different decorations, and then all these resources that you put into changing it is already taking a toll on you, on top of the usual burnout story that you are repeating. So yes, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but that was just the first reason why what prevents people from full recovery is hanging on to those external factors and avoiding doing the inner work. Second mistake is, again, something I've done, is thinking that, you know what, as soon as I finish this project, as soon as I do this, as soon as that is over, life will be so much easier. And it's so human to hope for the better, to want the better future, to hope that there's going to be a better tomorrow. And it's so much harder to accept that actually life is messy, and it's always going to be messy. It's kind of sad to accept that, but it's also liberating, because when you accept that life is kind of messy, then you can take steps to make it easier for yourself, to invest in yourself, to find ways to to find wellness in that mess. So that was, another mistake, thinking is just, hoping for better tomorrow rather than taking action today. Third one is trying to do it alone. Again, something I did because I thought, I have a background in psychology, I have all these years in mindfulness practices, I know so much, I can really find solutions, but trying to do it myself, it took me a really long time. I did it, but if I got some help earlier, it would have taken me much shorter. Although it's not easy to find that help because there isn't much help available that is catered for neurodivergent people, that is understanding all the aspects, that is systematic enough. Because when I was burnt out, I actually went to a therapist that was autism specific, and it did not help me at all. And I also see this a lot in my clients who come to me. They say they tried therapy and it did not help them with burnout. So if that's you, don't feel bad. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just therapy can be helpful, but it doesn't cover all the bases. Yeah.
Earlier, you had mentioned about your free meditation guide, which people can access for your website. It's a free meditation guide for people that don't like to meditate. So for me, meditation is a daily practice, but I also know many people that don't believe meditation can be useful for them. What do you think are some of the misconceptions about meditation? And I think there are many misconceptions, but what are the ones you
Yeah.
think there are?
So firstly, I'd like to start. There is, of course, many. I would probably mention two or three, but the first one I'd like to start with is, in general, misconception about mindfulness. I would say the way I understand mindfulness is just being intentional. It's just being intentional, and just because we all have stressors, we all have some tension in our lives, and we all need some way to relax, to disconnect, to switch off. And there is no wrong way to do that. Like, if it works for you to meditate and switch off that way, you can do that. If you want to go for a run and switch off that way, you can do that. If you say that you switch off at the end of the day by scrolling for 15 minutes, you can do that if that works for you and if you're being intentional about it. Because if you say that you're gonna scroll 15 minutes to disconnect and you end up scrolling for 2 hours, and you are spoiling your eyesight and spoiling your back or neck or whatever, then it's a problem. It's not a problem what tool you're using, it's how intentional you are about it. And if you are really mindful or conscious enough, self-aware enough to understand how it works or not. Because also some people, use alcohol to beat stress. And maybe it helps in the moment, but it creates so many other problems if they don't do it responsibly. So it's really, for me, mindfulness, it can be quite simple. It's just about, being intentional and being in every moment present and conscious and self-aware with yourself, and saying, okay, what am I doing now? What is the goal here? Is it giving me that goal? Because, you want to relax and meditation helps you, then great. If not, not. Then the second misconception about the meditation is that you need to be calm or it makes you calm. So it can for some people, but also what it can also do, and this is also healthy, it can bring up emotions and feelings that haven't been processed. And that might look like the opposite of calm. And some people get anxious, some people get restless. And it doesn't mean that something is wrong with your meditation does not work for you. It just really means that it's doing its job of bringing you more self-awareness. And there, it's like a fine line. And I understand, like, there is maybe two different camps. So one is, if a person is in a situation where they are really stressed, they have really high anxiety, or really close to the brink of depression, and this just so much and so hard that they might need medication, or they might need to just really stay away from that sort of practices if that keeps them sane and healthy and prevents them from harming themselves. Then of course you need to do what you need to do. You might stay away from meditation, you might take medication, you might do whatever you need to do to take good care of yourself. But ultimately, if you are not in that camp and you are thinking about your wellness, your well-being, if you're wanting to live more healthy, more mindful life, then it can be healthy to look at those emotions that come up, to process them, to feel them, because this is the only way they are going to go away. Because it is quite normal that when some emotions come up and they aren't pleasant for us, we want to just push them away or not feel them. But when we are pushing them away, they kind of go, when they're suppressed, they kind of create more issues in the long term. And the only way to make them go away is to look at them, to feel them, to process them. And that's the only way to let them go. Because every emotion, it doesn't come without a reason. It comes with some information. It comes to warn you of something, to protect you from something, to give you some sort of information. So you need to treat it as a friend who comes over. You open the door, you make them a cup of tea, you listen to what they have to say, you hear them out. And once they told their story, you can say, okay, thank you, you can go now. And then they go. But that's the only way to get rid of them. You need to hear them out. You need to look at them. That's kind of the way to process them and to let them go. There's more tools around that, to how to do that. But essentially, when we talk about meditation and some people are having different experiences, this is usually to do with that. And if this is not your way to process the emotions, if this is not your way to move through that, that is okay. You can find another way to do that. But I just want to touch point to this important concept that many people are missing.
Now, in your meditation guide, you talk about how there can be a form of meditation for just about anyone. So I'm wondering, how did you go about determining what type of meditation works best for you?
Me personally, or do you mean for people that I work with?
Yeah, you personally. I'd love to hear your process.
Yeah, so me personally, I have been in the yoga tradition for many, many years. And for me, I really like the mantra meditation, because you get something to chant and then you don't have like this so much chatter. I mean, I still have some chatter in your mind, but when you have something to focus on, something to chant, something to visualize, then you can really like get into that process and stay in that process. And I find that really helps me. I also sometimes like guided meditations of different types. It just depends on the mood, what type I want. I really like yoga nidra. It really helps me to relax. Sometimes I do that before sleep. It helps me to go to sleep. But I also sometimes do it in the middle of the day. And actually, yoga nidra is something that has been proven to have great effects. And I very much recommend it to everyone who's neurodivergent, and my clients have had great results. So the scientific research has proven that even 10-20 minutes of yoga nidra meditation, it kind of boosts your energy in a way that is very similar to sleep. So I sometimes do it in the middle of the day. If I feel like my energy is going down, it can be useful to do, so you get your energy back. And another thing that is really good for is connecting more with your body, because a lot of neurodivergent people have issues with proprioception. That means we don't feel our body very well. We don't always feel when we're thirsty, when we need to go to the toilet, when we're hungry, when we're tired. So yoga nidra helps to connect back to your body and helps to feel your body better. And this is something that a lot of us need in our lives.
Absolutely. And you're a mindfulness coach who helps neurodivergent women manage their burnout by helping them nurture their nervous system and balance their hormones. What hormones do you think women should be thinking about as it relates to burnout?
Yes, sure. So, of course, nervous system and hormones is just like two of the many aspects I talk about in burnout. There's much more, but if we're talking about hormones, so, women and also like any other people who have uteruses, who have menstrual cycle, the main two hormones that are affecting us throughout the month would be progesterone and estrogen. I don't know how much your listeners know about the hormones and how much it would tell them, these two hormones. But basically, what the important thing to understand here is that our society has been telling us that women, so there's something like wrong with women for like a few days a month when they're bleeding, or just before they bleed when they're emotional, and then they're normal the rest of the month. And that is not true. Like, the fluctuations of all the hormones throughout the month create 4 different phases, and each phase is different, and each phase has its own challenges and its own strengths. And I actually have a free training on that in my Facebook group, which is called Neurodivergent Mindfulness. So I very much invite you to go there and watch that training. I won't, expand here, but a couple of things I can say is that right after you finish bleeding for around a week until ovulation, that's when estrogen is rising. And this is a really go time when you have really good attention, when you have good energy. This is the time when I sometimes doubt, am I even autistic? Everything is so good. Like, I don't even get triggered by the noises. And this is the time to get a lot of things done, to get projects started, to get those tasks done which are, usually harder for you, or to go to these places that usually are maybe a bit more triggering for you. And then in the lead up to your bleed and during your bleed, so in the lead up to your bleed, you have progesterone rising. So that makes you more irritable, that makes you more sensitive, that makes you more sleepy, have low energy. So that's the time to really go for a weekend away in a spa, really rest and relax and let yourself sleep more. Don't get involved with people if you know they're going to irritate you. So yeah, these are like the main highlights, but there's much more. So I invite you to go and watch that training, so it will be useful.
And lastly, Paula, how can our listeners learn about you beyond this interview?
Sure. So I would like to invite you to follow me on Instagram. On Instagram, I am paula.mindfulness. So you see lots of different tips and short trainings and other resources linked there. As I mentioned, Facebook group Neurodivergent Mindfulness. You can find me there. So these are probably the main 2 places where most of my stuff is. Yes, and as I mentioned before, if you are burnt out or at the verge of burnout, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, if you're not sure what's going on, what to do next, I would very much recommend to book a free consultation with me so we can look more into your situation and I can recommend you the next steps, or perhaps show you how I can help you.
Well, Paula, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Thank you, Doug. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much to Paula for the conversation. To learn more about Paula and her services, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. Here at Autism Personal Coach, our clients are the experts, our coaches are the guides. The majority of supports for autistics are not helpful. They try to fix us, not support. That's why many are confused when we say our clients are the experts, experts of their lived experience. Our clients are the experts for what has worked for them and about the things they need and want in their lives. Our coaches first listen to our clients, then ask thoughtful questions, offer resources, and strategize with our clients so they can get what they need to thrive. Would you want a guide in your life to coach you to help you to get the things you desire? If so, then visit autismpersonalcoach.com for more information. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Autism Stories, and if you did, if you could tell a friend, foe, or anyone else you know about it so they could have the same enjoyable and educational experience as you when listening to Autism Stories, it would be very much appreciated. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.